Welcome to the Dr. Mary Louder podcast show, where we explore the messy, magical, and deeply human journey of healing. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Louder, a board-certified osteopathic physician, an accidental shaman, and a lifelong student of the human experience. Together, we're going to talk medicine, wellness, and culture in a way that's grounded, perhaps maybe a bit cheeky, but always from the heart. And don't miss Gadgets, Gimmicks, and Gotchas, my reoccurring segment where we lovingly call out the fluff and highlight the stuff that actually works. So grab your favorite brew, coffee, matcha, or that mysteriously green smoothie and settle in. It's time to get this party started with a strong dose of soul medicine. Welcome to the Dr. Mary Louder podcast show, a place where we gather to explore healing, story, and soul. Today, we're going to meet someone whose path took an unexpected turn towards heartbreak, and it led her to become a guide for others finding their way back to themselves. Our guest, Michelle Walters, is a former digital marketing executive who followed the thread of heartbreak into a whole new calling. After losing her beloved partner at the end of the pandemic, Michelle became a clinical hypnotherapist, helping others let go of limiting patterns and stepping into more freedom. In 2025, she launched a MakeMyHypno, which is an app that blends AI with her calming voice, rich metaphors, and personalized hypnosis recording. It's soothing, smart, and deeply human. We're going to be talking about grief, growth, and the quiet power of suggestion. So come on in, let's get cozy, let's breathe together, and meet a woman whose grief became a gift and whose voice may just be what your nervous system needs. Let's get to the conversation. Well, welcome, Michelle. Welcome to the Dr. Mary Louder podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your day. We're reaching across the country here because you're on the West Coast and I'm on the East Shore of Lake Michigan. So there you go.
Thank you, Dr. Mary. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and it's fun because we're both by a lot of water
That's true.
and a lot of wonder because there's a lot of beauty right around where you live. I'll tell you what, that's just a gorgeous area.
I am fortunate. I was born in California and I've left a couple of times, but it is a hard place to leave long term
Oh, so it's
because
really,
it's beautiful. I'm a nature freak, and
yeah.
we have we've got the coast, we've got the redwoods, we've got the Sierras, we've got lots of hiking. It's a good place for me.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, and we've got that without the Sierras. We've got the porcupines way up north in the Upper Peninsula, but beautiful woods and the lake shore, and so yes, so it's really wonderful. Probably a very similar energy in some ways, except for
Probably.
that fault line you live on.
Oh, well, you grow up here, you don't really think about it that much.
Mhm.
And, I've certainly lived through a few earthquakes, some tiny, some bigger,
Yeah,
but they happen. Things are rough for a while, and then life goes on.
I was going to say, aren't you just describing life?
Yeah, I think it, as a Californian, I've always been like, it's funny to me that other people who don't live around here think earthquakes are a big deal. And
Yeah,
yeah, I don't mean to say they're not a big deal, but you can't plan for them. They
right.
happen when they happen. And it's kind of like the rest of life. You just have to cope.
Yeah, and I think you can fairly say it's not your fault.
Exactly. It's not my fault.
Okay.
There's a lot of faults here, and they're not mine.
All right, all right. So we'll get into where we're going now. So I really wanted to bring to our listeners today a topic that I've never really discussed with folks, and I've been always so interested in it, and that's with hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And the things honestly, and you certainly feel free to roll your eyes at all this. The things I've been exposed to was, in school we had a hypnotherapist.
Oh,
Of course, everybody, this is middle school, so everybody clucked like a chicken who was involved and all that kind of stuff. And so we saw it as honestly as parlor tricks, right?
mhm.
But there's a one, and I know, that is not meant to be offensive at all. And I'm sure you've probably heard it all, but just explain to us simply, what is hypnotherapy? How did you get into it? How has it changed your life? And give us a lovely introduction.
Absolutely. So, hypnotherapy is really a usage of the state of hypnosis to help someone with a particular problem. And I think it's a helpful distinction because the show that you were exposed to in middle school was a hypnotist using that state of trance, which is particularly effective on kids and young people, to get them to do things that were a little outside their comfort zone, a little kind of on the edge of things. And what hypnotherapy is using the same technique, but for a different purpose, for a therapeutic purpose. I got into this in kind of a weird way. I haven't met anyone who got into this the way I did. I have always been interested in how people think and the mind. And I went to business school in the 90s, and I came out of business school and worked in marketing for years. And it was a fantastic experience for me. It was creative, it was influential, it was persuasive. Loved that about it. Somewhere along the way, I met a woman who I thought of her really as kind of a spiritual teacher, but it turned out she really was a hypnotherapist. We just didn't talk about the work we were doing as hypnotherapy work. And so she was a teacher and influencer for me. And then just before the pandemic, I picked up a novel by one of my favorite authors. One of my favorite authors is Leanne Moriarty. She's an Australian author, and she wrote a little book called The Hypnotist Love Story. And I read this book, this novel, and I thought, oh my God, this lady has the coolest job. I want to do that. And so I Googled it, and I live in California. I found a school I could go to on the weekends, and I pursued my clinical hypnotherapist certificate.
Wow.
During the pandemic, my life kind of, like so many lives did, I had met a wonderful man and we had plans to marry and make a life together. And he came down with a very rare blood disorder and ultimately started having strokes and seizures and kidney disease and passed away. And between losing a job and losing a partner and having all of this change going on in my life, I was like, okay, if I'm ever going to hang up a shingle and do this, this is the universe saying the door is open, go now.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did. Since then, that was in January 2022, I've written a couple of books. I've spoken on a lot of stages and a lot of podcasts, seen many, many clients for private work. I teach classes as well. And one thing that I'm excited about to share, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point in our conversation, is my new app, which my app is a tool for people to use for self-hypnosis.
Oh,
So that's a little bit of my backstory.
I have goosebumps. So when I hear your story, first of all, I'm sorry for your losses and how that
Thank you.
has been a part of your journey. And I know, and I understand and am familiar with grief myself. Um, and that transformation, you saw that as a portal to go into
Mhm.
and through. And then to see how quickly your career changed and grew and flourished. I mean, I would use the word flourished with you. Um, that is a sign enough that you are right where you're smack dab meant to be. So good
I
on
think
you for
so.
that. Yeah,
I
that's
think so. And I think I've always been a very, well, I wouldn't say fortunate. I'm not always fortunate, but I feel like overall I've been a pretty fortunate person in my life. And I've always been a person who's pretty good at trying to reframe things and see the bright side of things.
yes.
And that is very consistent with being able to help my clients in hypnosis to reframe what they're going through and to replace one thought with a better thought, which is a lot of what we do in hypnotherapy. People didn't know People knew hypnosis worked, but we didn't know why or how or any of that stuff for a long time. And so for years, it was sort of grouped with ghosts and aliens and the paranormal. And now we're still learning more about it, but we have been able to see the science in it. I'm a big science fan, major in science.
Yeah.
Um, and see that it helps people to dial down certain sections of their brain. And when you dial down those sections of your brain, you kind of get out of your own way. You become more open to suggestion, you become hyper focused, and you become less associated with your body. So it's very helpful to changing habits that are body related, um, which is why it works for things like weight and smoking and tics and stuff like that.
Oh.
It also, though, works for other kinds of challenges and problems. I love using it, especially with people kind of in their 30s to 60s, to help them with creativity blocks and business and public speaking and growth and those kinds of areas. We often think of hypnosis as something that works on, what I think of as a whole.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to be something that's a hole. It might be a new hill you want to climb.
Mhm.
And it's a magnificent technique for those purposes.
That's really interesting to say about the body awareness, the habits that keep us stuck to the body. And, when I hear that, one of the things that we do in any type of trauma-informed therapy or, really a functional holistic approach to mental health, which is one of the areas I work with in medicine, is we want to increase that connection to self. When I'm hearing you say it's making me pause to think, so is the person connected to some part of themselves where this habit lives versus really an authentic centering or connection to the more authentic part of themselves? Does that question make sense?
A little bit. I'm not sure I totally understand your question.
Okay, so let's see. One of the reasons people stay stuck in a stress response is they're slightly disconnected or grossly
Yes.
disconnected.
Yes.
And then what I'm hearing you say is hypnosis causes you to be not so connected.
It allows you to kind of make some space, I would say,
Okay.
for imagining things being different.
Okay.
And for releasing things that are taken up, renting space in your mind without paying for it, kind of thing. I It doesn't happen every time, but with many of my clients, one of the techniques that I use is a regression technique.
Mhm.
And we deeply connect to the feeling, the emotion, the bad juju around whatever it is they're going through, whether that's stuck in a weight loss journey or letting go of smoking or um, changing habits. I've helped a number of people with tics and trichotillomania, which is a hair pulling or eyelash pulling problem, and connect to what that feels like. And then we go back to where that came from. We
Mhm.
sort of use this hypnosis to create a psychological, mental, emotional vision journey to go back to where things came from. And once we go back, we can see things in a different light
Mhm.
and be able to change things. One of my success stories was a client who came to see me a few years ago. She was so afraid of bumblebees. She was so afraid of bumblebees that she couldn't stand to be outside for any period of time. And this really, sucks and changes your life. I live in Northern California. People spend a lot of time outside here.
Yeah.
And she couldn't go to her boyfriend's picnic. She couldn't spend time on her patio. She would run from her car to the door to the building where I worked because she was afraid she would get stung by bumblebees in the process. And in talking to her, she had no recollection of ever having been stung. She didn't know where this came from. It had been around as long as she could remember. And in our work through this regression technique, we discovered that she had a subconscious memory, a memory that she hadn't had before our work together. And the subconscious memory was that she was sitting as a little girl. She thought she was about 6, sitting in her nice dress next to her mom on a bench in a little garden. And there were roses and lavender and bumblebees. And while she was sitting there at the bench, her mother told her that her big sister was upstairs in the hospital. They were in a hospital garden, and her big sister was upstairs having a kidney operation, and she might die as
Oh,
a on in this operation. It was that serious of an operation. Well, my client, who was just a little girl, heard die and saw the bumblebees and put the two and two together. And so for her, bumblebees had been this subconscious symbol of fear of losing her big sister, fear of death.
yeah.
Once she had meaning to that story, she could go, wait, I don't have to have that story anymore. That was the story of a little girl. That's not my story of who I am today.
Hmm.
And she was able to get over the fear of bumblebees. And she's very funny. She's very clear. I do not like bees. I do not hike, but I can sit on my patio and I can go to the boyfriend's picnic.
Yeah.
And, these things are life changing,
They
all by work in this subconscious hypnotic state of mind. Pretty
That's
magical. It's wonderful work that I get to do this.
Yeah, that's a great story because it is about story. And I always share with my patients that you have a story, but you aren't your story.
Hmm.
And then the same thing too, in terms of going outside of our rational mind, the frontal cortex, the higher executive functions, getting into the imagination where you can change things
Yeah.
and you're
And
outside of space
and
and time.
sometimes people ask, can I be hypnotized? Well, you probably can.
Am I
If
hypnotized right now?
I don't know. I'm not doing the test on you to determine so. Probably not really.
Just teasing.
But hypnosis is largely a state of sort of turning off all of that daily noise, that outside thinking, and turning on your imagination, turning on your memories, turning on your connection to your higher self. To sometimes, not for everyone, but for many people, they connect with past relatives or spirit guides or other kinds of beings and advisors who help them get out of where they are and get to where they want to go. People often ask me, Michelle, do you believe in past lives? I don't know, but do they help my clients sometimes? Yes, I am all about the results. I don't care about the how. I just want people to find their story and figure out how to have, a higher quality life as a result of overcoming a problem.
Yeah. You mentioned the almost was walking through the door of the self-hypnosis, and so how much of hypnosis is self-hypnosis?
Actually, truly, a
Yeah.
hundred percent. A
Yeah.
100% is
I was hoping for that
because,
statistic.
yeah, 100%. Hypnosis works because you, as the person being hypnotized, allow it to happen. It is 100% consensual. So people often think, those kids on the stage in your middle school, oh, they were under the hypnotist spell or power. No, 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 no. It doesn't work like that. I am trained, I'm very good, but I am a guide to help people in this situation. It only works if my clients allow it, want it,
Hmm.
make it work for
Hmm.
themselves. At any moment, my client can open his or her eyes and announce that they don't like this, they don't want to do it anymore, and they're done. And that's that. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
So it is 100% consensual, and you can't be hypnotized if you don't want to be.
Hmm.
And I can't convince anybody of anything that their subconscious thinks would hurt them or be bad for them or is wildly untrue.
Yeah.
I joke with people if I put you in my chair and put you into a trance state and then tell you that, when you open up, the world will be flipped upside down, you're not going to take me seriously.
Right.
That's outside of your range of things that you could believe. So in hypnotherapy, we always work within the range of what someone can believe, maybe right up to the very edge of it, but we have to work within the range of what someone can believe. If
Mhm.
you can't believe that you will ever overcome your smoking habit or your fear of heights, it's not the right time for for hypnosis to come in and try. You have to get to the point of hearing some success stories, knowing that there are people who have achieved this, that you could be one, and be ready to incorporate some new thought processes.
Hmm. So when people come to you and they have it sounds like it's problem focused. So there's a situation they're facing, they can't find a way through it, and they've usually had multiple tries at things, right?
Yep. Yep.
Sometimes maybe at the end of their rope or the end of the road, and I don't mean that like in a mental health way, but I mean like I got nothing else to figure out here. I need some help, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, a lot of times people come to see me because they've been to the therapist, they've been to the doctor, they've tried quitting something on their own. Um, I tend to see people with kind of funky, odd problems,
Hmm.
at least on that side of things.
Hmm.
But then I also see people who have what I would think of as really sort of more common problems where the hypnotherapy has been really helpful. I had a client recently who had been in a leadership position at her job and it hadn't gone well. And then she needed surgery, and so she was out of her office for a few months recovering. And she was going back to work, but not as the leader role. She was going back as a basic employee again, but not a supervisor.
Hmm.
And realizing she just needed a little extra support for that change because of the pressure and the dysfunction and all of that stuff going on at work. Well, through hypnotherapy and a little bit of coaching, but mostly hypnotherapy, I helped her to get to a place where she's much happier going back to work, much more clear about what she has to accept and clear about what she can change and not change.
Hmm.
And really, I mean, her problem was, in my mind, pretty common problem, not something off the wall or,
Right.
she's not afraid of chickens. Like she's having trouble going back to work.
Right. Right. So if all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, which I learned that statistic early on, and I always stayed with that, and I'm glad that you shared that, is how do we, look at um how hypnosis intersects with artificial intelligence? There's a big
Ah,
Yeah, so there's a big push for some mental health work to get onto AI. And I did a segment, gadgets, gimmicks, and gotchas, that what really works, and being wary of AI for mental health purposes, right? Because AI is not really your therapist. And you aren't sure where it's pulling from or what's behind on the thread, right? So the ethics and some accessibility of that and some integrity of that. But is it even accessible for self-hypnosis?
I have found a way that makes it work pretty well.
Okay.
So what I realized was that there was a way of creating well, let me step first into a little bit more detail on self-hypnosis and recordings for self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
So we've been making recordings for self-hypnosis for years. I record for an app. I sell recordings on Etsy of my standard recordings for people. But all of these things that are pre-recorded are just made for the general public. They're not made for anyone in particular, right?
Yeah.
So, if the hypnotherapy is set on the beach, but you don't like beaches,
Mhm.
then that might not be as effective for you, right? And so what I realized is that there was an opportunity to use the tools out there with the right guardrails and the right systems to make it happen, create a new tool called MakeMyHypno. So this is my new invention. It came out a few months ago, 2025. MakeMyHypno.com blends AI and my scripting techniques and my voice to create about a 16 or 17-minute recording for someone based on them.
Mhm.
So it includes your name, Mary, in the script. And it is for what you choose it to be for. And it is set on a windswept mountain or a rocky beach or a moonlit plaza, whatever you choose you want it to be. and it will incorporate your affirmations or your make me feel more confident at work or whatever the details are that you want, and put all of this and make it into a recording in about 16. No, it takes about 5 minutes to get. The recording is about 16 minutes long.
Wow.
I feel comfortable with this because it is building upon somebody's own ideas.
Mhm.
It is under my direction. It is not in a state of hallucination. It imagines, but it's imagining within a very fixed context.
Yeah.
And it is helpful. People have been telling me how much they love their recordings. Somebody has made a recording and it helped her get to the gym. Well, that was a major achievement for her.
Yeah.
Other people are having more luck with their sleep. There are 19 things that my app works for right now. Imposter syndrome, confidence. Now, there are some things that my app does not work for because I don't think this type of system is the most effective. So you will not find smoking on the list. If
Mhm.
someone needs to quit smoking, they should work directly with me or another clinical hypnotherapist. It's not a good thing for a little recording, just
Mhm.
not powerful enough, doesn't solve the problem. But for lots and lots of things, it's a great tool. And I think it's sort of magical to be able to make this happen. Now, I totally hear you, Mary, when you're just working with ChatGPT through a standard interface and nobody's put up the guardrails. And, I mean, ChatGPT, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of the sum of human knowledge.
Mhm.
um, you might be talking to, in the chat version, you might be talking to someone who steers you right. You might be talking to someone who's not really knowing the whole
Yeah.
scope of things and doesn't steer you right. Um, my app is using artificial intelligence, but more through a pipeline with guardrails.
Mhm.
And so it's just using it to create a duplicate of my voice, telling people the things that are going to be helpful
Mhm.
for them to imagine and work to achieve. So
So
it's
we were,
it's it's an exciting new application, but I totally hear you. Like,
yeah. So it sounds like
AI is
like
not ready to replace the therapist.
yeah, so a continuum from, that self-hypnosis feels like it's in a little bit more the coaching realm, supportive
Hmm.
role. And maybe even after going through some clinical sessions with you, right? That
Right.
could reinforce the progress, reinforce the transformation, and then completely over to where the one-on-one work is needed, which is
Yeah.
interesting because that kind of mirrors some statistics I've seen about mental and emotional health, that out of 100 people, 3 people need a psychiatrist, about 10 people need to 15 people need a therapist, and really the other like 75 people need coaching and support and technique and tools, which is kind of fascinating.
That is fascinating. I've never heard that, but it's interesting and
Yeah.
it does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and those numbers I think were born out of the pandemic, born out of people getting mental and emotional support in telemedicine. And so somebody was wise enough to capture the data and then use that to build platforms appropriately. Um, and that's really true in medicine. I would say the majority of changes that people need to make are lifestyle changes,
Well,
right?
and that's a big piece of what I work with too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people think, oh, you're going to go to a hypnotherapist and you're just going to spend all your time in the chair. Well, you're going to spend some of your time in my recliner or on Zoom relaxing and in that state.
Yeah.
But we also have to work through a number of other issues. I had a gentleman come to see me in person in my office. I see people both in person and online, but he was local and he came to see me in person, and his problem was going to sleep. When I started talking to him, and his wife had set up the original appointment. He was drinking a lot of liquids after 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And, this is not, I can do what I can do, but at the end of the day, if you're going to drink a lot, if you're an older gentleman and you're drinking a lot of liquids after 5 p.m., getting up and having sleep difficulties is kind of par for the course.
Hmm.
You have to find a way to adjust both the head as well as the physical experience of
Yeah.
things,
The practice.
in order to achieve the results you're looking for.
Yeah. So take me through what like a session, outline a session. How does that look to a person who comes to see you?
So a person who's going to come to see me starts the first session is usually a lot of talking, a lot of me asking questions. I have an intake form that helps with getting kind of a starting point on some of the questions, and I have a very good sense of intuition, which I realized is really helpful in this work.
Mhm.
So somebody will say something, and then I'll think, oh, I should ask about this, or I should ask
Mhm.
about that. So our first session is usually maybe half me learning who they are and really kind of where the problem came from and how it's interfacing with their life, what it is they're looking to change. And then often a first session will be a little bit of me testing out their hypnotizability
Mhm.
to make sure they're a good candidate for this work and getting them started with just practicing and how to put yourself into this state. Being in a state of hypnosis is a completely natural state. People go in and out of this state all the time, like when you're driving down the road or watching a movie, or actually, everybody goes through it right as you fall asleep and when you wake up. But people don't always sort of understand how to intentionally put themselves
Mhm.
into this state. And then, depending on how that session goes and what the issues are and that kind of a thing, I will set up a series of other sessions to be working through kind of how do we do the go back work and figure out why we got into this situation. How do we reframe this from thinking one thing to thinking something else? I had a client who came to see me for a single session, which I do from time to time. She was going to get some surgery on her eyes,
Mhm.
and she was very nervous about it. She was really worried about it. But in our hypnosis session, she realized that she was doing this to help herself. I
Yeah.
worked with her and helped her sort of let go of the fear
Mhm.
and focus on the help. And then she was like, "Yeah, now I can sleep." Which, it's really good to sleep well before your
Yes,
surgery.
it is. Yeah.
So we have a number of sessions to kind of work through these issues. Some problems are relatively quick to solve, like hers. Some problems are stickier. In general, I would say that things that have been going on longer take longer.
Mhm.
um, I mean, not always, but sometimes that's true. Um, and but it's just amazing to me how many people I've been able to help in this way. I often say that I help people with their mindset, their message, and their momentum, because that's really what it takes to change how you think about yourself and how you portray yourself to the world and how you get off your chair and start, doing, being this other person that you know you can be.
Wonderful. It sounds really good. And I love that, one of the things too is this would really cut down on some medications required, even short term, like if a person's going in for a surgical procedure or a blood draw or something like that, where, all of a sudden they're requiring a medication that has a fair bit of side effects and it may even be a controlled substance,
Yep,
and so,
absolutely.
yeah.
I haven't been able to do it myself. I think it does take quite a bit of hypnotic power, but I had a teacher in my hypnotherapy school who could go to the dentist without any medication
Oh, like no,
and
no anesthetic even, you mean?
no anesthetic. Um, just, and we saw a video
Mhm.
of a hypnotherapist in London assisting with a man getting a hernia surgery,
Mhm.
no anesthesia.
Mhm.
Um, it is a very powerful technique that when you've really mastered it, you can find a way to sort of mentally take yourself
Mhm.
somewhere else. Where is pain felt? Pain is felt in the brain.
Mhm.
And so if you can figure out and be taught and learn and practice how to turn off some of those receptors when they're overreacting to things,
Mhm.
you can achieve amazing results.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I've got it here and we'll put it in the notes of where to contact you at michellewalters.net. I think that's
That's
correct.
right. Yep.
And so folks can look you up because I imagine you go across all time zones.
Yes.
Time, you go across
Yes.
all
Time
time.
is time is kind of meaningless in this
Yeah,
work.
I was gonna say time and space zones, so wherever you are. So that's wonderful. But I really love the fact how practical this is. I like that this is accessible for people. I like that it's not like, oh, well, let's, massive, shift in whatever I believe just to try something that could be so beneficial. And so I really appreciate, now that's not to oversimplify it. That's to say the simplicity often is a wonderful access to getting great success for the things folks are struggling with.
The
Um,
wonderful thing about hypnotherapy is it will make it better or it will do nothing.
hmm,
And,
there.
you know, so put simply, you don't have a lot of risk to try.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well,
I'd
it's
also like to offer, Mary, to
yeah,
your listeners, I can give you a code to put in the show notes for a discount
yes.
on MakeMyHypno.com. So I'll share that with you and you can give it to your listeners. If they go to that page, they will get a code to put into the sales page that will take some money off of their purchase.
Oh, that sounds great. That'll be wonderful. Everybody's looking for a good bargain.
Everybody's looking for a good bargain, and I want to get this tool out there and help people to find it and use it and try it because it's unlike what's available. You know,
Yeah.
pre-recorded stuff's great. This is way, way better.
Yeah, that's really, really neat. So, all right. Well, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate your time today, your expertise, your passion, your drive, and how this is not only changing the lives of others, but also transforming your life. It's very apparent, and you're right in the sweet spot. So well done by you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mary.
All
Lots of fun
right.
being on the show today.
All right. Bye from here, guys. See you at the next visit and the next podcast with Dr. Mary Lauder. I would like to thank our guest, Michelle Walters, today, who has stepped through the messy middle of life and experienced a wonderful transformation. She's provided a podcast code as a special discount for our listeners. See the link in the program notes for that code. As well, you can find there her website, so you can look for that link there in the podcast notes as well. Thanks for listening and see you next time. Be well. That's a wrap for this episode of the Dr. Mary Lauder podcast show. I hope you've heard something today that made you think, laugh, or say, well, now that was a plot twist I didn't expect. Just remember, your health journey is more than lab results and supplements. It's spirit, soul, and story, and sometimes a gadget or two you probably should have returned. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share our podcast with someone you love. If you didn't like the show, well, maybe don't tell anybody then. And if you want more soulful medicine, curious conversations, and tools that actually help, visit me anytime at drmarylauder.com. Until next time, stay kind and stay curious. Music today is provided by Mr. Dave Evans. He composed, played, and engineered this song specifically for our podcast, and it's called Soul Strings, an acoustic reflection of the healing path. Thanks, Dave. It's great music.